The shuttle to the diplomatic station was small, but it was built for long journeys across empty space. Inside, the walls were bright and clean, with rows of simple seats facing forward. Most of the passengers were quiet. Some read from small screens, some looked out the windows at the blur of stars, and others simply rested with eyes closed. Aaron, a young human traveler, sat near the middle of the shuttle. He was not an important official or a soldier. He was only a student, carrying with him a small pack of books and notes. He had been chosen to attend the station because he was studying alien languages, and the diplomats wanted new voices to learn and practice. Aaron felt both nervous and excited. The galaxy was wide, and the diplomatic station was said to be one of the busiest crossroads between species. He kept his hands folded in his lap, his thoughts running fast. He wondered what kinds of people he would meet, and if he would be able to understand even a little of what they said. His teachers always told him that patience and kindness open more doors than pride or strength. Aaron believed this, but he knew not everyone agreed. Across the aisle, a quiet figure drew his attention. She was a girl, perhaps close to his own age, but she was not human. Her skin had a pale shimmer, almost like the reflection of moonlight on water. Her hair was dark, and her silver eyes seemed sharp as blades. The moment their eyes met, she turned away, her chin lifting in a small but clear gesture. Aaron had read about her people before. They were called the Sorati, known for their proud and distant ways. They valued discipline, control, and the art of silence. Many humans said the Sorati never trusted easily. Some even said they disliked humans altogether, believing them too loud, too reckless, too soft. Aaron did not know if those stories were true, but he could see the coldness in her gaze. Still, curiosity tugged at him. He wanted to speak, to introduce himself, to offer a polite greeting in one of the simple Sorati phrases he had practiced. But before he could open his mouth, she turned her head and spoke first. Her voice was soft but firm. "Keep your distance." The words struck him like a closed door. Aaron froze, unsure of what to say. She did not raise her voice, yet the meaning was sharp. It was not anger, but a warning, as if she wished to set a wall between them before anything began. He nodded slightly, lowering his eyes. "I understand." That was all he said. He did not try to argue. He did not try to smile his way past her barrier. He simply respected her request and looked back at the window. For a time, silence filled the space between them. Aaron watched the stars streak by, endless and bright. Yet his mind kept drifting back to her words. "Keep your distance." It was strange how heavy such a simple phrase could feel. Aaron reminded himself that not all meetings began with warmth. In truth, many did not. Perhaps she was tired. Perhaps she carried duties too heavy for someone so young. He knew the shuttle was carrying several young delegates and apprentices to the station. She might be one of them, and the weight of her role might be greater than his own. Still, her presence felt like a shadow at his side. Not a cruel one, but a guarded one. Aaron could not help but wonder what her story was. The shuttle gave a gentle as it adjusted its course. The lights above flickered for a brief second, then returned to normal. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably, but no one panicked. These small tremors were common in deep space travel. Aaron opened his pack and pulled out a small book. It was an old story collection from Earth, filled with simple tales of kindness and courage. He read a few pages quietly, the words calming him. He wondered what a Sorati would think of these stories. Would they see them as childish? Or would they see the strength hidden inside simple acts? He did not notice at first, but the girl's eyes turned toward his book. She did not lean close, nor did she ask a question. She only glanced for a heartbeat, then returned her gaze forward. Aaron caught the small motion, but he pretended not to notice. He respected her wish for distance, but he felt a spark of curiosity in that fleeting look. Minutes passed. The shuttle remained calm, yet the space between them carried a quiet tension. Aaron wondered if she thought poorly of him already, or if she only wished to be left alone. He decided not to force anything. Some walls could only be lowered with time. When the captain's voice came over the speakers, announcing that they would soon pass near a gravitational field, the passengers fastened their belts. Aaron checked his strap carefully, making sure it was tight. Across from him, the alien girl did the same, her hands moving with quick precision. Their eyes met once again, and though she said nothing this time, there was no anger in her glance. Only calm focus. Aaron looked away first, respecting the quiet moment. Yet in his heart, he felt the beginning of something he could not name. The journey was only starting, but already it felt heavier than he expected. The alien girl had built a wall between them with a single sentence. But walls, he knew, were not forever. As the shuttle glided forward into the vast unknown, Aaron sat still, waiting. He did not try to break the silence again, but he carried a thought in his mind. Sometimes the first step in any story was not a word or an action. Sometimes it was only the choice to stay, to listen, and to wait for the right moment. And so he waited, with the stars rushing past and with the memory of her silver eyes and her guarded warning echoing quietly in his mind. The shuttle continued its steady journey across the void. Inside, the low hum of the engines was the only sound that never faded. Most of the passengers settled into their seats, some closing their eyes, some lost in their own thoughts. Aaron sat quietly, his book closed now, resting in his lap. He thought again of the alien girl beside him, her silver eyes, her voice when she told him to keep his distance. The memory was sharp, but he had accepted it. Time passed slowly in space. Minutes felt like hours, hours like days. Aaron tried to distract himself by watching the stars drift past the wide viewing window, but it was always the same sight. Endless points of light, some brighter than others, all far away. It was beautiful but lonely. The shuttle's calm rhythm suddenly changed. A warning tone echoed from the control deck, followed by a short announcement from the captain. Attention, passengers. We are passing through the edge of a gravitational wave. Please secure your belts. The turbulence will be brief. A quiet unease spread through the cabin. Passengers shifted in their seats, fastening straps, pulling bags closer. Aaron tightened his belt again, just as the shuttle began to shake. The steady hum of the engines grew louder, vibrating through the walls. The alien girl beside him kept her face calm, but her hands gripped the armrests. Aaron noticed how pale she looked, as if she carried more than just the stress of the turbulence. The shuttle dipped suddenly. A few passengers cried out in alarm, but the sound was quickly swallowed by the rumble of metal. Aaron braced himself, pressing his back to the seat. The lights above flickered, then steadied again. He turned his head slightly and saw the girl. Her eyes were closed, her breathing quick and shallow. She did not look frightened. No, it was something different. She looked tired, deeply tired, as if her body was struggling with more than just the motion of the ship. Another sudden lurch made her body shift sideways. For a moment, she looked as though she might fall out of her seat, but the strap held her in place. Her head, however, leaned to the side, and before Aaron could react, it rested against his shoulder. He froze. Her earlier words echoed in his mind. Keep your distance. Yet now, here she was, her head light against him, her breathing soft and uneven. Aaron's first thought was to move, to straighten, to pull away. But he stopped himself. She had not done this on purpose. She was exhausted, worn down, perhaps even unwell. To move now would only disturb her. So he remained still, his body tense, his thoughts racing. The turbulence continued for several minutes, though to Aaron it felt like much longer. Each vibration of the shuttle seemed to draw her closer, her weight pressing gently into him. He sat stiff as stone, unsure of what the right choice was. Around them, other passengers noticed. A few glanced their way, some with curiosity, some with surprise. The sight of a Serati girl leaning on a human was not common, but no one said anything. In space, strange moments often passed without words. Aaron lowered his gaze, watching the top of her dark hair resting against his shoulder. He wondered what burden she carried. She had looked strong when she told him to stay away, but now she seemed fragile, as if the wall she built was cracking under pressure he could not see. Minutes passed. Slowly, the turbulence faded. The shuttle's shaking grew softer until at last it smoothed into steady flight again. The warning lights dimmed, and the captain's calm voice returned. "Passengers, the disturbance has ended. You may relax your belts. We will continue on course without delay." The cabin filled with quiet relief. A few people laughed nervously, others sighed. Aaron did not move. The girl was still asleep against him. Her breathing had evened out now. It was softer, calmer. She seemed truly asleep, her early attention gone. Aaron dared not disturb her. He sat still, listening to the rhythm of her breath, feeling the strange mix of weight and warmth against his side. He thought again of Earth, of train rides where tired travelers sometimes leaned against strangers by accident. He remembered how natural it seemed then, how human it was to accept such small trust without question. Yet here, across the stars, the moment felt heavier. This was not just a stranger. This was a Serati, a member of a people who saw humans as outsiders, perhaps even as weaknesses in the galaxy's order. And yet, here she was, asleep on his shoulder. Aaron's mind wandered. He imagined what she might say when she woke. Would she be angry? Embarrassed? Would she pretend it never happened? He could not know. But for now, she looked peaceful, and that was enough. The minutes stretched into nearly an hour. Aaron's shoulder grew stiff, but he did not move. He felt it was a small thing he could offer. Stillness, silence, a place for her to rest. He had no great power, no important role on this shuttle, but he could give her this thought at last. The girl stirred. She shifted slightly, her head lifting from his shoulder. Her silver eyes opened slowly, blinking as if she had forgotten where she was. Then she realized. She saw him, saw how close they were. For a long moment, she said nothing. Aaron kept his voice low, careful not to break the fragile silence. "You were tired. You can rest if you need to." Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. She sat up straighter, her pride returning like armor being fastened. She brushed a strand of hair back, her voice quiet but sharp. "Do not misunderstand. This was not permission." Aaron nodded. "I know." Their eyes met again. For the first time, however, there was no coldness in her gaze. Only weariness, and perhaps the faintest trace of something softer hidden beneath. She looked away quickly, but Aaron caught it. The shuttle pressed on through the endless dark, its engines steady once more. Around them, the other passengers had already returned to their quiet routines. But for Aaron, the moment lingered. The wall she had built between them still stood, yet a small crack had appeared, unplanned and unspoken dot, and though neither said it, both had felt it, the strange closeness. Born in turbulence, when the stars shook and silence gave way to trust, even if only for a breath of time. The shuttle glided through calm space once again. The storm of turbulence was behind them, leaving only the soft vibration of the engines. Most passengers had returned to reading, resting, or quietly talking in low voices. The earlier fear was already fading, but for Aaron, the memory of what had just happened remained sharp. The alien girl had leaned against him, sweeping through the storm as if her body could not fight exhaustion any longer. Now she was awake, sitting straight again, her silver eyes fixed firmly on the empty aisle ahead. She said nothing, but Aaron could see the faint tightness in her shoulders, as if she wanted to erase the moment that had passed. Aaron kept his gaze on his book, though he had not turned a page in 10 minutes. He did not want to press her, nor did he want to make her feel embarrassed. Yet he could not stop thinking about the small weight of her head against his shoulder, or the steady rhythm of her breathing as she slept. It had been a moment of closeness he had not expected, especially after her cold warning when they first met. The passengers around them, however, had noticed. Whispered voices carried softly through the cabin. A pair of travelers in the row ahead exchanged curious glances. Another passenger across the aisle gave a small smile when Aaron accidentally caught his eye. It was clear that the sight of a Sarati girl resting against a human was unusual, perhaps even rare. The girl must have noticed the glances too. Her back stiffened, her jaw set. At last she turned her head slightly toward Aaron, her voice quiet but firm. "You will say nothing of this," she said. Aaron looked up slowly, meeting her silver gaze. He spoke with the same calm tone he had used before. "I was not planning to." Her eyes searched his face, as if looking for any sign of mockery or hidden pride. She found none. Aaron's expression was steady, neither smiling nor frowning, only honest. At last she gave the smallest nod, though the tension did not leave her. The silence between them stretched on. Aaron closed his book and placed it back into his pack, deciding it was useless to pretend he was reading. He leaned back against the seat and let his eyes wander to the stars outside the window. Minutes passed before the girl spoke again, softer. This time, "You should not think this means anything. I was only tired." Aaron turned his head slightly, careful not to make her feel cornered. "I understand," he replied. "Everyone gets tired." Her lips pressed into a thin line, as if she was not satisfied with his answer, but she said nothing more. Instead, she folded her hands neatly in her lap and stared forward with unblinking focus. Though she tried to hold onto her proud silence, Aaron noticed small details she could not hide. The faint shadows under her eyes, the way her fingers curled tighter when the shuttle gave the smallest vibration, the stillness she forced upon herself, as if refusing to show weakness even when her body begged for rest. Aaron thought about asking if she was unwell, but he stopped himself. She would only see it as pity, and pity was not what she wanted. What she needed, perhaps, was space, and the chance to let her guard down without feeling judged. The shuttle's lights dimmed slightly as the ship shifted into night mode. Passengers adjusted themselves for long rest, pulling blankets or closing their eyes. Aaron stayed awake, his thoughts restless. He wondered again about her world, her people, and the reasons she carried such heavy pride at her age. At last, the girl spoke again, her voice so soft that Aaron almost missed it. "You humans, you always stare." Aaron blinked, surprised she had broken the silence. "I was not staring," he said gently. "I was only wondering." Her head turned, and her silver eyes met his once more. "Wondering what?" Aaron thought carefully before answering. "What you are carrying, because you look very tired." Not just from the ship. The words hung in the air. She did not reply at once. For a moment, he thought she would scold him again, but instead she turned her gaze back to the aisle. "You should not ask questions like that," she said finally. "Some burdens are not meant to be shared." Aaron nodded slowly. "Maybe so, but sometimes it is easier if someone listens." Her shoulders shifted the smallest bit, as if his words had unsettled her calm. She gave no reply, and the silence returned. Yet this time, it was not the sharp silence of a wall between them. It was a quieter, softer silence, almost thoughtful. After a while, She leaned her head back against the seat. She did not look at him again, but Aaron noticed her eyes closing for just a moment longer than a blink. Perhaps she was allowing herself to rest again, not against him this time, but close enough to show that her earlier warning no longer carried the same weight. The other passengers soon drifted into light sleep. The hum of the engines filled the cabin like a lullaby. Aaron remained awake, his thoughts circling around the strange turn of events. A Serati girl who demanded distance now sat beside him in silence, her earlier coldness tempered by weariness. He wondered if she would remember this moment differently than he did. For him, it was the first sign that the wall between them was not unbreakable. For her, perhaps it was only an accident she wanted to forget. But accidents sometimes planted seeds, and seeds had a way of growing even in the most guarded places. When Aaron finally closed his eyes, he carried one clear memory with him, the weight of her head against his shoulder and the unspoken trust hidden inside that small, fleeting act. The shuttle carried them forward through the dark, drawing closer to the diplomatic station with every passing hour. The stars outside glimmered endlessly, quiet witnesses to the fragile bond beginning to form, not in words, but in silence. The shuttle continued through the endless dark, carrying its passengers toward the great diplomatic station. Time inside the vessel moved slowly, measured by the soft rise and fall of the engine's hum and the dim lights that marked each passing hour. Most of the travelers had grown quiet, some asleep, some lost in thought. Aaron sat awake, his hands resting loosely in his lap, his eyes on the faint glow of the stars beyond the window. Beside him, the alien girl remained still, her posture straight, her silver eyes forward. She had not spoken since their brief exchange, but Aaron could sense that her silence was different now. It was not the heavy wall she had built at the start of the journey. It was thinner, as if cracks were beginning to show. For a while he said nothing. He respected her quiet, yet he could not help but wonder about her. The way she had leaned against him in sleep, the way her sharp words softened after, and the way she carried a burden that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. At last, he decided to try. His voice was gentle, almost careful. "I never asked your name." The girl turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as if measuring his intent. For a moment, Aaron thought she might ignore him. But then, with a low, steady tone, she answered, "Nira." Aaron repeated it softly, almost like a memory he wanted to hold. "Nira, that is a strong name." She tilted her head, her silver gaze fixed on him. "Among my people, names are not given lightly. They are chosen to reflect duty, not comfort." Aaron nodded, understanding her meaning. Duty can be heavy. Nira looked away again, her expression unreadable. For several moments, the only sound was the hum of the ship. Then she spoke, her voice quieter this time. "I am not here by chance. I am not traveling for myself. My people sent me. I am to stand as a representative among those who gather at the station. Every word I say, every step I take, will reflect on my entire race." Aaron listened closely, not daring to interrupt. "My people do not trust humans," Nira continued. "They say you are reckless. You move quickly, speak freely, laugh too easily. They believe such behavior is weakness. But I am told to observe you all, to learn how you act when you are not guarded. Then I will return home, and my words will shape how my people treat yours in the future." Her hands tightened in her lap as she spoke, her voice steady but strained. "That is why I cannot allow mistakes. One cannot allow closeness. Even a moment of weakness could be seen as betrayal of my people's pride." Aaron sat quietly, taking in her words. He understood now why she had been so cold, why she had warned him to stay away. It was not hatred. It was fear of failure, fear of letting down the burden placed upon her. He leaned back slightly, keeping his tone calm. That sounds like a very heavy task, especially for one person. Nira's silver eyes flicked toward him. For a moment, her expression softened, though she quickly straightened it again. It is not for you to pity me. This is my role, and I will carry it. I was not offering pity, Aaron replied gently, only respect. It is not easy carrying the weight of many lives in your words. Nira studied him carefully, as if deciding whether to believe him. Her gaze lingered longer than before, and though she gave no answer, her silence felt less sharp than it once had. The shuttle shifted slightly as it adjusted course. The motion was calm this time, smooth against the stars. Nira leaned back in her seat, her hands unclenching little by little. She let out a slow breath, not quite a sigh, but close. Aaron took the moment to share a piece of himself. On Earth, we have a saying, even the tallest tree bends in the wind. It means that even the strongest must rest sometimes, or they will break. Nira tilted her head, considering his words. Strange. My people say the tree that bends is already weak. Aaron smiled faintly. Maybe, but sometimes it is the tree that bends that survives the storm. Her eyes narrowed, but not with anger. Instead, it was a look of thought, as if she was turning his words over in her mind. They sat in silence again, but this time it was a softer silence. The kind shared between two people who had exchanged truths, even small ones. Hours passed. The shuttle grew quieter as more passengers fell asleep. Aaron dozed lightly, though he forced himself to stay aware. Nira remained awake longer, her silver eyes sharp against the dim light. Yet at last, even she allowed her head to rest back, her breathing slowing, her body giving in to exhaustion. Aaron glanced at her briefly, then looked away. He did not want her to think he was watching. Still, he carried her words in his thoughts. She was not only proud, she was burdened. And in her burden, Aaron saw something familiar. Humans, too, had carried such weight through history. The weight of proving themselves, of surviving despite being called weak. Perhaps, he thought, that was the bridge between them. Not power, not strength, but endurance. When Nira's eyes opened again, the first light of the station's far-off beacons flickered against the shuttle's window. They were not yet close, but the glow was visible in the distance, a reminder that their journey was moving forward. She sat up straighter, brushing her dark hair back. Her face was calm, but her voice held the faintest trace of weariness. You listen too much, she said softly. Aaron gave a small smile. Maybe, but sometimes listening is the best way to understand. Her silver gaze lingered on him once more, and though she said nothing, she did not turn away as quickly as before. The shuttle pressed onward, carrying its passengers through the silent dark. Inside, two travelers sat side by side, not yet friends, not yet allies, but no longer strangers divided by distance. A wall still stood, but it was no longer whole. Small cracks had appeared, enough for light to slip through, and though Nira's burden remained, she had spoken of it aloud, and that alone was a step towards something new. The shuttle glided smoothly through the endless stretch of stars. The storm of turbulence was long behind them, and the passengers had settled into a calm rhythm. Some rested with heads bowed, others whispered quietly to their companions, and a few studied glowing screens in silence. The soft hum of the engines carried them forward, steady and unbroken. Aaron sat in his seat with his arms folded lightly across his chest. His eyes were half closed, but his thoughts were awake. He thought of Earth, of the green fields outside his home, of crowded markets filled with laughter, and of the many stories he had read in his childhood. Traveling across the stars made those memories feel both far away and strangely close, like warmth carried in his heart. Beside him, Nira sat with her usual straight posture. Her silver eyes were steady, her face calm, but Aaron sensed that her mind was not at rest. She had revealed part of her burden earlier, and though she wore her pride like armor, he could see the weight behind it. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then, Aaron broke the silence with a simple thought. Do your people tell stories? Nira turned her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Stories are for lessons. Tales of victory, of discipline, of ancestors who did not fail. They are not for amusement. Aaron nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. On Earth, we tell many stories for lessons too. But sometimes we also tell them just to make each other smile. Nira's gaze sharpened, though not with anger, more with curiosity. To smile? That is the purpose? Aaron gave a small grin. Sometimes, yes. A smile can carry hope. It reminds people that even when life is heavy, there can still be light. Her silver eyes studied him carefully, as if weighing his words. At last she spoke. Strange. My people say light is earned only through strength. Maybe, Aaron replied softly. But sometimes strength comes from finding light, even when the world is dark. Nira leaned back slightly, her arms folded. She did not argue, but she did not agree either. Instead, she waited, and Aaron understood she was allowing him to continue. He thought for a moment, then began to share. On Earth, there is a story about a boy who planted a single seed in a place where nothing grew. Everyone told him he was foolish because the ground was too dry, the sun too hot. But he cared for it every day, giving it water, even when there was little left for himself. And slowly, the seed grew, first a small sprout, then a tree. Later, that tree gave shade and fruit, and many people came to rest beneath it. What seemed foolish at first became hope for many. Nira tilted her head, listening. And the lesson? Aaron smiled faintly. That patience and care can change more than strength alone. She considered this in silence. Her silver eyes softened, though only slightly. My people would call the boy weak, but they would also value the tree when it was strong. Perhaps the act itself would confuse them. Aaron chuckled lightly. Maybe confusion is not bad. Sometimes confusion makes people look closer. Nira said nothing, but she did not turn away. Aaron felt encouraged, so he continued. He shared another tale, this one about an old woman who gave away her last loaf of bread to a hungry traveler, and in return, the traveler later saved her entire village from a flood. Then he told a story about children building a tower of stones not to reach the sky, but simply because they wanted to see how high they could go together. With each story, Nira listened more closely. Her face remained calm, but her eyes betrayed her thoughts. They no longer carried only sharp distance, they carried curiosity. She was measuring these strange tales, trying to understand why humans valued such simple acts. After his third story, she finally spoke. Why do humans speak? Of kindness as if it is power. Kindness cannot stop storms. Kindness cannot defeat an enemy. Aaron nodded slowly. Maybe not. But kindness can keep someone standing when storms pass. And sometimes it can turn an enemy into a friend. She frowned slightly, not in anger, but in thought. Her lips pressed together as if she wanted to dismiss his words, but could not. Aaron leaned back in his seat, his voice softer now. The galaxy is large, Nira. There are many who are stronger than humans. Many who are faster, or wiser, or older. But humans keep moving forward, not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to let go of each other. We laugh, we share, we help. That is how we survive. For a long moment, Nira was silent. The hum of the engines filled the air, steady and quiet. Finally, she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. My people call humans reckless. Perhaps this is the reason. You give so much of yourselves without knowing the return. It is dangerous. Aaron gave a faint smile. It is dangerous, but it is also what makes us human. Her silver eyes lingered on him, searching. He met her gaze calmly, without fear or challenge, only with steady honesty. At last, she looked away, though slower than before. The shuttle drifted on, carrying them closer to the great station. Around them, the other passengers remained quiet, unaware of the quiet bridge forming between the two travelers. Aaron rested his head lightly against the seat, closing his eyes for a moment. Nira stayed awake, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. But in her mind, the human's words echoed. Stories of patience, of kindness, of light found in dark places. Stories that her people would never tell, but which now would not leave her thoughts. For the first time since the journey began, she did not feel entirely alone in her burden. And though her pride remained, something small had shifted. Not broken, not surrendered, but shifted. Like a tree bending in the wind, not weak, but still standing. The stars outside burned brighter as the station drew nearer, a beacon of gathering cultures and voices. And in the quiet of the shuttle, between a human and a Sarati, a seed had been planted. A seed that neither of them yet understood, but one that would grow. The shuttle had traveled for many hours without trouble. Its engines hummed steadily, and the passengers grew used to the quiet rhythm of space. Aaron leaned back in his seat, eyes closed, though his mind stayed awake. Beside him, Nira sat with her usual calm posture, her silver eyes fixed on the stars outside the window. She had not spoken for some time, but Aaron sensed that her silence was different now. It no longer felt like a wall. It felt more like thoughtfulness, as if she was weighing his words and stories in her mind. The calm did not last. A sharp alarm broke the silence, filling the cabin with red warning lights. The shuttle jolted suddenly, throwing some passengers against their seats. A heavy shudder ran through the walls as if something deep inside the ship had broken. The captain's voice came quickly over the speaker, tense but steady. "Attention, passengers. We are experiencing a systems failure. In one of the stabilizers, please remain seated and calm. We will work to restore control." Panic stirred in the cabin. Voices rose, some passengers clutching their straps, others looking wildly around as if searching for an escape. Aaron sat forward, gripping the armrests. He had traveled before, but never in a ship that sounded so unsteady. Beside him, Nira's eyes narrowed. She was not panicking. She studied the sound of the engines, the vibration of the floor, the flashing lights. Her voice was sharp but calm. "The stabilizer is not destroyed. It is locked. If it is not reset, the shuttle will drift into the debris field ahead." Aaron turned to her quickly. "You understand the systems?" Nira nodded once. "I studied Sarati and human ships. The design shares certain structures, but I will need access to the control panels." The shuttle jolted again, harder this time. Overhead, a few bags fell from compartments, scattering belongings across the floor. The other passengers cried out, fear growing stronger. Aaron looked at Nira. "The crew is busy at the front. They may not reach the panel in time. Where is it?" She pointed toward the middle of the cabin, where a sealed hatch covered part of the wall. Aaron had seen it before, but never thought about its purpose. Without waiting, Aaron unbuckled his belt. "Then we have to try." Several passengers gasped. "Stay in your seat," one warned. "It's not safe." But Aaron ignored them. He pushed himself to his feet, steadying his balance as the shuttle shook again. Nira rose beside him, her movements swift and precise. Together they crossed the narrow aisle to the hatch. The panel was locked by a simple latch. Aaron pulled at it, but the shuttle lurched again, throwing him against the wall. He braced himself and tried once more. This time, the latch snapped open, revealing a small set of glowing wires and circuits inside. Nira crouched low, her silver eyes focused sharply. The secondary regulator is frozen. It must be realigned. Aaron frowned. Show me what to do. Her hands moved quickly, pointing to a narrow bar of metal that vibrated unevenly. Hold it steady when I release the lock. Do not let it snap back or the circuit will burn out. Aaron nodded, placing his hands firmly on the bar. The shuttle jolted again, nearly throwing him off balance, but he gritted his teeth and held. Fast. Nira pressed her fingers against a small switch, her movements quick and certain. Now, she said. The lock released with a spark, and the bar strained against Aaron's grip. His arms shook with effort, but he did not let go. Sweat formed on his brow as he pushed the bar into place. Steady, Nira instructed. 1 more inch. Aaron grunted, forcing the metal into alignment. At last, it clicked into place with a sharp sound. The vibration in the shuttle slowed, then steadied. The alarm faded, replaced by a softer tone of recovery. The passengers let out a wave of relieved voices. Some clapped, others sighed deeply, and a few bowed their heads in silence. Thanks. Aaron stepped back, breathing hard. His hands were trembling, but he managed a small smile. Did we fix it? Nira studied the panel carefully, then closed it with a firm motion. For now, the stabilizer is balanced again. The ship will reach the station without drifting. Aaron laughed softly, more from relief than humor. Good. I was not ready to float into a debris field. For the first time since they met, Nira's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. It was small, quick, and gone almost instantly, but Aaron saw it. The captain's voice returned over the speaker. Stabilizer is restored. We thank those who assisted. Passengers, remain calm as we continue our course. The cabin quieted slowly. Some passengers still looked shaken, but most were calmer now. Many glanced at Aaron and Nira with gratitude, whispering quietly about how quickly they had acted. As they returned to their seats, Aaron looked at Nira. You knew exactly what to do. Her silver eyes softened slightly. Knowledge is expected of me, but strength to hold the bar, that was yours. Aaron chuckled. Maybe we made a good team. Nira tilted her head, considering his words. Perhaps. They sat down again, fastening their belts. The hum of the engines returned to its steady rhythm. For a time, neither of them spoke, letting the calm settle over them once more. But something had changed. They had faced danger together, trusted each other in a moment where failure meant disaster. The wall between them was thinner now, cracked by action, not just words. Aaron rested back in his seat, his breathing steadying. You know, Nira, sometimes trust is built faster in danger than in peace. She looked at him, her silver eyes thoughtful. Or perhaps it is only revealed. Trust exists, or it does not. Danger shows the truth. Aaron smiled faintly. Then maybe we found some truth today. Nira said nothing, but she did not look away. For a long moment, her eyes remained on him, steady and unreadable. Then she turned back to the stars, her posture calmer than before. The shuttle pressed forward, carrying them closer to the great station. Around them, the passengers settled into quiet again, but for Aaron and Nira, the silence was no longer empty. It was filled with the memory of shared struggle, of hands steadying against failure, of trust born in trial. And though the stars outside remained the same, the space between them had changed forever. The stars outside grew brighter as the shuttle neared the great diplomatic station. From the windows, passengers could see the distant shape of the structure, a vast ring turning slowly in space, glowing with lines of blue light. Dozens of ships drifted nearby, waiting for permission to dock. The sight filled the cabin with hushed voices. For many, this was their first time seeing the station. Aaron pressed his forehead lightly against the window, gazing at the structure with quiet wonder. He had seen pictures in his books, but the real thing was far larger, far more alive. This place was the heart of neutral space, where species from across the stars came to speak, argue, trade, and share. For him, it was not only a station. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Beside him, Nira sat in silence. Her silver eyes stayed fixed on the station, her face calm but unreadable. Aaron sensed that her thoughts were heavier than his. For her, this was not just a place of wonder. It was the place where her burden would truly begin. Her people had sent her to watch, to judge, to carry their pride on her shoulders. Every step she took inside that station would be measured. The captain's voice filled the cabin. "Passengers, we are preparing to dock. Please remain seated until we are secured." The shuttle slowed, a gentle vibration running through the floor as it aligned with one of the docking gates. Lights flickered along the walls, changing from red to green. A quiet sigh of relief spread among the passengers. The long journey was nearly over. Aaron adjusted his strap, but his gaze slid to Nira. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, her back perfectly straight. On the surface, she looked composed, but he noticed the faintest tremor in her fingers. He spoke softly. "You are ready for this?" Her silver eyes turned toward him. She did not answer at once. Finally, she said, "I must be. There is no choice." Aaron nodded. Sometimes having no choice is the hardest part. But you do not have to walk in alone. You can still carry pride without closing every door. Nira studied him for a long moment, her gaze sharp yet thoughtful. "You speak as if you understand." Aaron gave a small smile. "Maybe not in the same way. But humans have carried heavy things too. We survive because we share the weight. Even when one stumbles, another helps them stand. That is how we move forward." Her lips pressed together, as if she wanted to dismiss his words, but she did not. Instead, she turned her gaze back to the window, the station now filling the entire view. The shuttle shuddered one final time and then grew still. A soft chime signaled that docking was complete. Passengers began unfastening their straps, standing, stretching, and gathering their belongings. Aaron reached for his small pack, slinging it over his shoulder. He glanced at Nira. She had not moved yet. She sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes lowered. For the first time since he had met her, she looked less like a proud envoy and more like a young traveler about to step into the unknown. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Aaron followed, standing beside her as the passengers moved toward the exit. The air inside the cabin buzzed with excitement and relief. Voices filled the narrow space, but between Aaron and Nira, there was a silence that felt heavier than all. The noise around them died as they waited in line. Aaron noticed several Serati waiting at the docking gate, their tall forms straight, their expressions cold and serious. They were dressed in the dark robes of their people, marked with silver threads. Their eyes fixed on Nira the moment they saw her, and Aaron felt the weight of that gaze even from across the airlock. Nira straightened, her face turning calm and sharp once more. The proud mask returned smooth and perfect, hiding any weakness. Yet before she stepped forward, she hesitated. Aaron saw the smallest flicker of doubt in her silver eyes. And in that instant, she moved closer to him. Without a word, she leaned gently, resting her head against his shoulder. It was not from exhaustion this time. It was not an accident caused by turbulence. It was a choice. The passengers around them noticed. A few raised their brows, some whispered, but no one spoke aloud. The Serati across the airlock did not move. Though Aaron imagined they did not miss the sight, Aaron did not move either. He stood still, his pack on his back, his body steady, letting her rest against him. He did not speak. He did not smile. He only allowed the moment to exist. After a breath, Nira straightened again. Her face was calm, her eyes steady, but Aaron knew something had changed. They stepped forward together, crossing into the wide halls of the station. The air was filled with the hum of countless voices, the glow of many banners, and the sight of beings from dozens of species moving in every direction. It was overwhelming, even for Aaron, who had dreamed of this place for so long. Yet he felt grounded by the quiet strength of the girl walking beside him. Nearest people moved to greet her, their faces cold, their eyes sharp, but Aaron noticed the way she held her chin high, her step steady, as if their heavy gaze could not touch her. Perhaps it was because, for a brief moment on the shuttle, she had allowed herself to lean. Not on duty, not on pride, but on trust. As Aaron followed her into the station, he thought of the first words she had spoken to him. Keep your distance. Now, the memory felt distant itself, like a shadow fading in the light. The journey ahead would not be simple. There would be trials, debates, and perhaps new storms waiting beyond the station's walls. But Aaron knew one truth, as clear as the stars outside. Distance could be crossed. Walls could crack. And even the proudest heart could lean, if only for a moment, on a shoulder offered with quiet strength. And in that moment, he understood what it meant when people said that humans were special. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they carried warmth into even the coldest spaces. The station doors closed behind them. The story of Aaron and Nero was only beginning.